Let's get started. If you want to have Unity open, we're going to start from there. You can open up your game. So why don't you open up your game and let me know when you're ready.
He's working on it. And slow today.
Okay, welcome everybody. Week 11. We are going to be continuing with our game project this week. Next week, we'll probably finish it up, and then you'll have a few more weeks to get everything ready, and we'll go into back to the website and work a little bit more on your website, and that will finish up the term. There is no final exam. It's just you'll just turn in your final website, and your website will have all of your assignments on it, and I'll encourage everybody to look at everyone's website so you can see all the work and share it and kind of give each other feedback. And then I'll just grade each assignment on Canvas. So be sure to post it to Canvas as well. You'll just post the URL. You can just post the URL to your website, and I can find your assignments that are on your site. So last week we installed a starter. You opened a starter file and unzipped it and opened it in the Unity Hub, and you should have gotten a blank Unity project. And then we right-clicked on the hierarchy, went to 3D Object, and did a terrain, created a terrain. And then you clicked on the terrain, and you went over here to the inspector, and we went over to the second button, and we learned how to raise and lower the terrain using these brushes that you got from the starter kit. Oh, by the way, if you weren't able to do the starter site, I have another video that goes a step-by-step how to get everything that I included in the starter file so you can get everything ready to go. And so it matches what I'm going to cover in the lecture. So you have all these brushes, and you use the brushes to raise or lower the terrain. If you hold down notice that if you hold down the control key, it'll lower the terrain. Right? And if you let go of the control key, you'll raise it. So we went in and we raised the terrains, and then we went in and we smoothed the heights to kind of smooth everything out, make it a little bit more realistic. We also did erosion. You can use different kinds of erosion to kind of add some interest and some gullies and valleys to your terrain. There's a brush size and a brush strength. You can come in here and actually carve valleys. You can zoom in and see that I've made a little valley here by carving it. Then we did the set height right here. And what that does is I'm going to turn down the brush size, and I'm going to set the height, I'm going to hold the control key down, and I'm going to set the height to be right there. And then when I let go, it'll make a shelf of that height. So we're going to use that today to actually create some structures. And then what we did is we went in and we painted the terrain. Here we painted textures, and we added some textures down here in the layers area. We added a bunch of textures. You can do up to 8. So here I'm adding some rocks And again, you might want to zoom in so you can see this more clearly. Okay, notice that I'm zoomed way in here, and I'm going to add a little bit of grass to this. Notice that I've added grass. I'm going to add a little bit of sand, and I'm kind of just tapping so that you can see. I'm going to lower the brush size too, and so you can really see the textures that you're adding. I'm going to zoom way in, and these work best if you kind of mix them up a little bit. So I'm adding a little bit of rock, tapping a little bit. Notice that I've added rocks in there. I can add some pebbles, right? And I'm going with a pretty small. See there, I've added more pebbles and more of these rocks here. I can add more grass. So you're probably going to start with a pretty large terrain. So you want to start with a large brush, and then as you go into certain level, you're going to pick a certain area and build out a town. So where you're going to build that out, you probably want to go in more detail. You know, kind of mix the painting so it doesn't look so repeated. Right? Notice that I'm seeing right over here, this pattern is repeated. Okay, I can go in there and kind of tap and kind of mix the textures together. You can also come in here and adjust the size of the material. If I remember right, it's, I'll probably get you guys working, then I'll look up what this is, but you can adjust the size of these stamps so that they look different. Well, I'll find that where that is, and you can adjust the size so that they look a little bit better. So what we want to do today is continue with the skills and show you how to add trees and flowers and grass. So I'm going to kind of pick an area here where my town is going to be. Let's do it down here. And I'm going to maybe spend some time getting the terrain ready. Okay, adding a bit more mud perhaps, and zoom out, and I'm going to flatten this area here. So where my town is going to be nestled in these hills. All right, so I'm going to take my brush and do a more solid brush, and then take my tool and change it from paint texture to set height. Okay, and I'm gonna make my brush size smaller, quite a bit smaller. And come in here and just flatten this part of my terrain. So that's where my town is going to be. So I'm going to set the height to down here, down below, right there. And I'm going to come in here and just kind of flatten this area. Okay, I have a nice flat area, as you can see, right in here. Make it plenty big. So it's a big flat area. Okay. And now I'm going to start to build stuff here. First thing I want to build is a wall. We're going to kind of enclose our town. We're going to create in a wall, a brick wall. And that's going to give you some opportunity to kind of manipulate 3D objects. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click on my hierarchy, and I'm going to go to 3D objects, and I'm going to do a cube. Okay, and there's my cube. Okay. I want to make this a wall. So I'm going to make it a rectangle. So I'm going to click on the cube, and then over here in the scale, I'm going to set my scale X to, let's say 100, right? And I'm going to set the Y to 10. And there's my wall. You can see that I didn't flatten up the area enough, right? I think you're going to want an area that's much bigger than that, because you're probably going to want a wall that's more like 500 to enclose your town. So I am going to click on my cube over here in the hierarchy. I'm going to label that. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to relabel it, rename it west wall. So we're going to want to label everything really carefully because you're going to have a lot of objects over here in your hierarchy. And you'll notice that I have now this icon right here of the arrows, and I can move this wall, move it up and down, left and right, and backwards and forwards. Okay. So you can see that I don't have nearly enough of a flat area here. So I'm gonna go back and move this wall out of the way, and let's flatten this whole area here where my hills are. So we're going to click on the terrain, go back here to the second button, set height. I think I had that to smooth height. That's why it didn't work. I want to set the height. Okay, let's set the height here by holding down the control key. Let's set it to like the bottom right here, right about there. And I'm just going to flatten this all. Let's turn up the brush strength and the brush size. Okay, I have a nice big flat area. And now I'm going to double click on the wall to bring it into view, use the arrow tool, and now notice the wall is under the ground there. So I think I still need to make this flatter and bigger, right? So let's do that. Let's make it quite a bit bigger. Go back and click on the terrain. Click on the second button, set height. I'm going to set it maybe a little bit lower down here and just flatten all of this out. You can see that I have a bunch of different textures in there, right? And you'll notice that where it's too low, I build up the land, and where it's too high, I knock it down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now take my wall. And by the way, if you double click on the wall, it kind of over here in the hierarchy, it shows it to you over here in your terrain, in your scene. And I'm gonna move this down. What you want to do is you want to kind of zoom in and you want to make it so it just kind of kisses the ground there like that. Okay. It can be in the ground a little bit. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. So I'm going to go over here to the X and make this, let's say 130. Okay. Maybe 150 is good. So you want to make this nice and big because you're going to want room for your town to go here. And notice that over here, it's not quite flat. See that? So again, I would go over here to my set height, click on the terrain, set height, and just flatten it. So it's all flat. You can do your wall in the mountain too if you want, right? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this wall, right? Click on the wall, right click on it, and there's a duplicate option. And then click on the little cross arrow tool and see that I have two walls now, okay? And again, if you want to make it go all the way out to here, just flatten this part of your terrain, okay? All right. Which I think that I want to do because I want to duplicate this wall and twist it so that it's a square. Let's make the town square. So again, you'll go back and forth on the terrain, set height, go over here, smooth this out. It looks like I also need to make this more make it easier to look at. I think I need to go back and paint the textures, and let's just make this all grassy. You can see that my brush size is too small. And maybe add a little bit of rocks in here, but kind of like, I definitely need to get rid of that snow there, right? And here. All right, so you get the idea. And I'm gonna take my west wall 1 and rename it east wall. And then move it over to the edge of the cliff there. Okay. Now let's duplicate it again. Call this, rename it the north wall. And now I'm going to go to the rotation over here, and I always mess this up. I think it's going to be the Z. I'm going to make it 90 degrees. And no, that's not right. I always mess this up. Let's try the Y. Let's make that 90. There we go. I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees and then move it over to here. Now here's the key. Is what I want you to practice doing is zooming in. I'm using my right mouse button and I'm kind of moving it around, and I'm using the scroll wheel, and I'm going to try to move this so that it just kisses the other wall. Okay. And you want to kind of, by the way, if you double click on the wall there, it'll kind of, or you can also select the wall and press the F key, and that'll zoom in for you on that. Okay. On the wall there. Okay. So now there's a key shortcut that you're going to need in this exercise and the next one, the next week. And if you hold down the V key, you'll notice that there's a little square right there. See it? And that will, if you hold down the V key and click and move this, it'll line up the wall perfectly for you. Okay. So make sure they're lined up, and then now duplicate the north wall, label it south wall. And you now have all 4 walls. So I'm going to click on the south wall and move it over to the south. Okay. Now, what you may want to do is you may want to flatten more of your terrain so this sits in a flat area. You can also go back in and add hills inside of here if you want, but I'm gonna let you guys just kind of play with that. You can either flatten out more area so these will all line up, or you can go in here to your south wall and shorten it and make it maybe 120, right? And then move it. Use the V key to line it up and just kind of resize it so it's the right size. Notice also that the hill is digging in a little bit into that one. So you can either leave it in there or you can flatten it. So I'm going to pause the recording. Okay, so once you have your 4 walls and you've gone in and you've to the corners, zoom way in on the corners. It's good practice. You can, sometimes this works best if you actually come in from the top and hold the V key down. Select your wall, hold the V key down, and then move it, and you'll notice that there is you might have to get a lot closer, but there's a little corner. Oh, I need to select this arrow tool and see the little box there. That'll help you guide and lay those in perfectly. All right, now we're going to texture this. We're going to put a color on it so you can see it better. So here in the assets window, right click and choose create material. Right in the middle, create material. All right, and that'll bring this other inspector up. The default color, notice, is white, but we're going to change it to red. So in the albedo, there's a little knob there, a little nipple. Click on that. Click on the color and change it to red. Okay, just change it to red in the color box, and notice that this changes to red down here, and then you get a new material down here called, let's just call this red material. Okay, red material. And I'm going to take that material and drag it on each of the walls. So now they're all red. And that's going to make it easier for you to line them up too. Okay, so that's how you add color to your objects. If you want, for extra credit, you can build a statue using these various 3D objects. You can use cubes, spheres, capsules, cylinders, planes, and make a sculpture and then color them. All right, now what we want to do is we want to add a texture to our material. And you'll do that by clicking on the little nipple there. I got ahead of myself. Click on the little knob and notice there's all these textures, right? We could actually make it checkerboard. See that? Or we can make it kind of abstract color. You can add like a concrete wall to it. Do a pattern. So we don't really have a good texture here for the wall. So let's go get one, right? Let's go get a texture and add it to our game. And the way you're going to do that is you're going to go to Google, go to your browser. Let me bring browser window over, okay, and go to Google. And go to the images section of Google and type in brick wall tile. So the key here is it has to be a tile that repeats itself, right? Right? So not all of these are going to work, and you'll notice that some of them will look better than others. But the idea is you want to make something, maybe the wrong repeatable brick wall. Repeatable brick wall tile. Maybe that'll give us a better, yeah. So let's just click one and right click on it and do save image as, and save it to your downloads folder. Just call it, well, that's kind of a weird file. I don't like that JPEG. So let's do another one. I don't want to give you guys trouble. Let's just do this one. Save image as. It should be a JPEG. I'm not sure that's going to work, but let's just try it. That's a JFIF. I'm not familiar with that. Let's just call this red brick. I'm saving it to my downloads folder so I can find it really easily. Okay. And then I'm going to go into my file manager. Okay. Go to my downloads folder and just drop it into Unity. Yeah, I don't like this because it doesn't, okay, it probably is not going to work. It needs to be a JPEG. I don't know why Google's doing that. What'll happen is that when you click on this material and you click on the little albedo, that image should now appear here if it's going to work. That one didn't work. So let's go back and get a better one. Let's make sure that it's a JPEG. I'm not sure why Google's doing that. I've never heard of that file format. Let's just do repeatable red brick wall tile JPEG. And let's save image as, and let's make sure that's a JPEG. Oh, it's still not a JPEG. Oh, that's weird. It's got a weird file format. Darn. Seamless. The other way we can do this is we want to put the word seamless. That's the key. It has to be a seamless texture. That way you won't see the seams. Like that one looks like a really good one. I don't know why it's giving me that file format. That's really weird. I've never seen this before. Let's just do brick texture seamless. It looks like all of them are. That really weird file format. You can always open it up in Photoshop and change it, but I've never had this. Let's copy the image. Save image as. Oh, they're all that weird file format. All right, so what we can do is we can, if you're on Windows, you can hold the Shift-Control-4 key down and make a copy of that. If you're on Windows, what you can do is you can go to your search and search for the snipping tool. It's like this. Search for the snipping tool, create new, and then come in here and just grab. The trouble is it's not going to be seamless, but it's good enough for us. Grab a section of that, okay, and just save it. Right. Let's save it as a JPEG. I have no idea why Google's giving me this weird, and we'll just call it. See, that's a JPEG. Call it red brick. It's really weird. And I'll do it in the downloads so I can find it. Red brick. Okay. And you can do that with several of them. If you can get Google to show you one that's a JPEG or a PNG, then it will be seamless. It will look better. But for now, this is good enough just to show you the technique. So there's my red brick JPEG. Notice that it looks correct now, right? Now that looks like brick. Okay. So I'm going to click on my material. I'm going to go to albedo and I'm going to assign a texture to that. Why isn't that there? I can also just drag it. I can also just drag it right on the wall. And notice that it's now a brick wall. Okay. Now it looks weird, right? So you're going to need to adjust the dimensions of that of that material. Okay. So I'm not sure why that's not showing here. Let's type in red brick here and maybe we'll find it that way. There it is. Okay, so let's do it this way. Okay, so I've added that. Notice that it adds it to the material there. And then I can go over here and notice that let's remove the color here. Make it white and notice it looks better over there, right? So that one already, notice that one, because I've already applied the material to the wall and then I applied the texture to the material, it's going to give us more options for controlling how that red brick works and how it looks. Okay, so there's my brick. I'm going to go over here to the tiling right here under, not the emission tiling, but here under tiling. And let's change the X and the Y. Let's change it to 10. And maybe it's this one I change. If you don't use this every day, you forget. Let's change this one to 10. There we go. Under emission tiling, if I change the X to 10, notice how much better that looks. And let's change the Y to like 0.5. Let's change it to 2. Actually, 1 looks the best. Okay, so now that looks much better. The problem is it's not seamless. I can actually see that it's not seamless. So that's the problem of Google. It's okay. We're gonna use some different. I'll find you a tiled brick wall, but that's going to be the brick wall for your village. You're going to build a village in here next week, right? And then we'll add trees and grass and bushes, right? Looks like it's not on the ground there. Is that okay? You'll also notice that sometimes the top doesn't look quite right. So you can adjust if you zoom in on this from the top, look straight down on it. Sometimes this doesn't look quite right. So you have to adjust the tiling over here on that material.
Could you clarify how you got that bird's eye view?
So what I did is I'm just using my right mouse button to kind of zoom up in the sky. And then I'm zooming down and I'm using the right mouse button to spin. So it takes a lot of practice. That's kind of one of the objectives of this unit is I want you to learn how to manipulate 3D space using a 2D device, because this is going to be really common in the future that you'll need tools. It's just a skill that it just takes practice. So by being able to build a wall and make it match, later on next week, we're going to do something called prefabs, where you're going to build the buildings. And so the buildings are going to require you to assemble different pieces. And you're definitely going to need to learn how to scroll in, how to zoom out, how to rotate the mouse. If you get lost, you can always double click on the item in the terrain in the hierarchy to see how you zoom in on it. Let's zoom way out, right? And if you get lost, you can just click on one of the things and it will zoom in for you. You can also press the F key with, notice that I've got the west wall selected. Press the F key, zooms way in on it, right? So those are really valuable skills to learn. The important thing to do is you're going to start to add a lot of objects here in your hierarchy. So these are things that are in your game. These are things that could be in your game, right? Like under prefabs here, under flooded grounds, there's these buildings, and there's a lighthouse, a guardhouse, and you can bring it out, notice, and add it to your village, and then move it around. You can scale it, but they're pretty cool and they're pre-built. So there's a bunch of these. There's also a lighthouse you can bring out, right? And you'll notice that over here it gets really busy and complicated because some of the prefabs have a bunch of different pieces to them, right? So you're going to get a lot of stuff, right? That you'll be cluttering up here. So let's learn how to really clean this up. And so next week, you're going to basically build these buildings. You're going to build the cabins. Each cabin has like 3 or 4 different pieces to it. You're going to build a greenhouse, right? You're going to build a bridge. There's 2 pieces to it. So you can build this bridge. So you get into a good habit. Let's go back and clean this up a little bit, right? So let's right click on our hierarchy and create an empty, something called, it's essentially a folder, okay? And let's call that my town, okay? Town. And then inside the town, click on the town folder and let's create another empty. And let's call that one the town wall, okay? And then inside the town wall, let's drag in all the wall pieces. Okay. So notice that I'm dragging them in the town wall and they're indented. See that? Oops, I don't want to do that. I want to do it there. Okay, so notice that all those walls are in the town wall. And the advantage of that is if I click on the town wall, I can move the entire town wall around, right? It also makes this really clean and makes it easy to kind of go back and find things. All right, so in the town, let's just do, let's see, let's break this up. We're gonna make cabins, we're gonna make barns, we're gonna make, well, let's just drag for now the lighthouse and the guardhouse into town. Oh, and look at the lighthouse is made of different pieces too. These are level of detail. I'll explain that a little bit later. Essentially, it uses different images depending on how close you are to the lighthouse. If you're far away, it uses LOD2. If you're really close, it uses LOD 0, meaning look at the the detail of the texture of this. It's really detailed. When you're looking at it from far away, it doesn't need as much detail. So that's what that means. So so we have our town, and notice that if I collapse the town, it's all nice and compact. So everything will be inside that town, and then you'll have a lot of items in there that will be all organized as well. So that's where I'll stop for now. If you'd like to play around with some of the prefabs, you can, but I'll show you how to build these step by step next week. And then I'll also show you how to add trees and grass and bushes.
Thank you so much.